Hello, welcome to session 9, the final session of London Roller Derby Ref School. I am Cluster Schmuck, or Dahlia, and I am the head referee of London Roller Derby.
And I am Feminist Killjoy, or Tem, and I am a roller derby referee based in Glasgow, Scotland.
As we always do, just going to let everyone know who we actually are in terms of the wider group, which is about a third of people are already an official who are here. About a third don't know anything but would like to be an official. They may never even seen a game before, and about 22 to 23%, 22.4% exactly, are players who don't have any interest right now of becoming an official, but think learning the rules might help them, which I would agree with. Also, there are over 31 to be precise, countries represented within this class or sessions or whatever. And so, we are very much placing ourselves in a British European setting, although both of us have officiated elsewhere. So if what we do is different to what you do, that's okay. Share it with us, let us know, let's talk about it, let's understand how roller derby has built differently. But we just need to place ourselves in that way. There aren't a ton of updates. We're going to go through kind of this entire session is about what's next. So we'll be going over that over the course of this session. So we're going to talk about the basics in terms of what's next. So there's a few things. There's the equipment you might need to become a roller derby referee. There's about the leagues that are near you, and there's also training. In terms of equipment, skates and your protective gear are quite an important first thing that you need. And I've actually gotten my skate bag out. So you want a bag that's kind of big and can hold stuff. You'll learn which ones you want, and you get your patches and stuff. And then you've got your skates. The thing I would say is if you haven't bought your skates yet and you're thinking about getting skates, I'm not an expert. My favorite skate shop is Double Threat Skate in London, run by some London roller derby people. And they're great because you can ask them questions and learn what you need to do. But the thing I would advise on is if you get a really cheap first skate and you get really into roller derby, you will end up upgrading to one that's probably going to cost you anywhere between 50 to 120 pounds. Things to look out for, in my opinion, and please write what you think in the chat, is I think having a toe stop, so the thing here that you can adjust, is really helpful. Having something that you can change the wheels on and they move a bit because of this bit of the skate, and something that's a bit softer here. A lot of the time people really struggle with the skills that Tem's going to talk about because their skates are really holding them back from being able to move, to be honest. The other things you want is a Fox 40 Classic. So a Fox 40 will say Fox 40 Classic here on the whistle. And the reason I say classic is because there's a few different tones. Some of them are so loud, they're even worse for your ears than a general whistle that we have, which is why some people also buy earplugs. And you might want to get a kind of a finger whistle, so it can go here, and then also one that goes around your neck. They have different purposes for different roles, but they're both really, really helpful. And I always kind of just carry everything I have in basically this plastic bag. You also will eventually want to get a ref shirt. It can be a really big moment to get your first ref shirt. I wouldn't prioritize that. If you're thinking about where am I spending my money, I really, really wouldn't prioritize a ref shirt, but also be aware that the WFTDA has particular things it needs in a ref shirt in terms of how wide the stripes are and all that kind of stuff. So you might want to look on the WFTDA uniform policy to check that out. And then something else that we thought in terms of equipment that would be helpful is a stopwatch. It will be very often you might turn up and there might not be any NSOs, non-skating officials, and you might be asked to time it. And it's just generally being helpful. So in my skate bag, the things that I have are I have tools for my skates. I have my stopwatches and whistles. I actually have spare whistles, which I think we will have to reflect going forward how much we're going to be sharing our whistles, but actually before, you would turn up and a skater would be officiating, and that's really helpful. I also have plasters or band-aids or other ways of calling the things you put on your feet for when your skates are causing you pain, and some hydrating pills. Some officials will also have even more things as you go along, like having sweatbands with different colors and things like that. So
So I've been taking them out, but I have a thing here. It's got identifiers in all sorts of different colors because generally people don't bring them for themselves. I have a countdown stopwatch as well as a regular stopwatch because sometimes if you have to time the period, people will expect that of you as an official. Sharpies, always important. And yes, spare whistles, pencils, also pearl whistles for in case you have two games in a single venue.
Yeah. The thing about pearl whistles are often used if you're in a venue and they have 2 tracks. I still haven't actually gotten around to buying a finger pearl whistle, which I always regret. But the thing, because the finger whistle is often better. If you don't have one, you can literally just wrap it around your fingers like that. But they're just different tones. And when Tem is talking about a countdown and a count up stopwatch, what it means is a stopwatch that will go from like 30 minutes down to 0 rather than 0 up to 30. And my stopwatches are also countdown because I find that really helpful jam timing. And like I got mine from like Decathlon. So you can end up spending like 20, 30, 40, 50 quid on a stopwatch, but also you can find them for like 10 to 20 pounds. And I now carry spare batteries with me. In terms of the basics as well, finding your community, which can be really hard, even though often roller derby can be a really great community to walk into because you've already got people there. I think as an official, it's really different. You're not part of the team as such. You hopefully will feel part of the league, but some skaters can forget that we exist. So I would, if you are a skater watching this, please think about how you treat and engage and invite your officials to things. Please don't assume just because they're enthusiastic and they say things that they actually always feel welcome. But also think about which other officials are around. So the real basics is find the league you want to go to and email them and say, when can I come to a scrim? When are you doing your fundamental course or fresh meet or starter course or whatever you might call it? At London Roller Derby, we have a fundamental course, which is actually free for people who kind of are aiming to be an official. So you can learn how to skate. And then think about, if you don't have a league near you, how do you find the officials who might live near you who also travel and who go to different places? So that finding your community is really important. And it's also important because if you are all by yourself, the things that Tem are going to be talking about, particularly a bit about training, is going to be really important. But also if you're all by yourself, thinking about the value you will be adding to that league, who have been kind of trying for years to just kind of get things going and like have a scrim, will be so valuable. So really think about like how you find your own community, and then training. And on that note, I'm passing over to Tem.
Sorry, I was muted. Hello. Yes, we're going to talk about training. So in terms of next steps, one of the most important features of progressing as an official, of moving away or moving onward or alongside your theoretical learning, all of this rules knowledge, scenario chats that we've been doing, is going to be going to training once it exists, if it exists where you are, working physically and mentally to improve yourself as an official. So there are lots and lots of different things that are crucial in training. The first thing is to have a conversation with the league that you are going to be training with. And this is true whether it's the league that you're learning to skate with, the league that you've been with for years, the league that you're just going to stop in on while you're traveling around the world for a tournament, and you're just going to pop in one day and ref a scrimmage or something. Whoever you're going to train with, make sure you have a conversation, make sure you set some expectations. What do they need from you, and what are you going to give them? And what do you need from them? So understanding those kind of mutual needs, getting into a dialogue is really important. We've talked already a little bit about how sometimes things are expected of officials that aren't what you think you're going to be doing. The best way to like navigate those situations is just to talk about them. Be honest about what you want, be honest about what is working for you, what won't work for you, Be generous with the things that you can offer. You have a unique perspective, you have unique insights, you have all the energy that you're giving. You're a valuable member of a community, whether you're there for just one day or for years and years of your life. But also be selfish. And by that, I mean, ask for the things that are going to help you. You're not just there to do what other people want you to do. If you want to grow as an official, you need to be realistic and honest about your own needs for your own development. So let's go into that a little bit more. What are the things that you can offer? So when you're entering into this conversation about expectations, about this mutual relationship that you want to enter into, officials often offer game structure during training. So you might be asked to time drills, you might be asked to do the pack definition to make sure that people know when they're out of play and all of that kind of stuff. You might be asked to use your whistle to make the lead calls, the call-offs, generally just doing your officiating role of keeping the structure of the game in place, and adjusted structures for drills and so on. Perhaps the coach will say, call off after 30 seconds, call off when someone gets lead, or call off when the not lead jammer breaks from the pack, or anything like that. But often that responsibility goes to officials at training. Similarly, when there are drills, physical drills happening at training, you might be asked to do penalty calls. Now, this is something that it's really important that you do have a conversation with the league about, particularly if you're a guest official. Lots of different leagues have different feelings about whether or not officials should call penalties in drills. Some drills they will want penalties, some drills they want to just be doing their thing. But in either one of those situations, you can watch the penalties, you can see things, you can make calls even if you don't blow your whistle and say them out loud. Whether you're actively engaged with the contact drill or not, there will be something for you there in terms of your own learning. You can also offer rules education. Often officials are some of the most knowledgeable people regarding rules and the ins and outs of it, which can be useful for strategy, can be useful for when teams are practicing particular skills, but also just for newer skaters, for when there are changes in the rules. Officials are often ahead of the curve on that. So you might be able to offer some help in their education in that regard. And also just everything that makes you you as a contributor to a community. All of those things are also things that you offer. So don't be afraid to get involved with your league or with your local network of officials in other ways. Perhaps you're a spreadsheet wizard, perhaps you're great at writing funding applications, perhaps you're going to be epic on the equity committee. Like, there are so many different things that you can do, and everyone who is an official, who is joining a league, has these additional skills to participate in the DIY culture of the sport in other ways. So these are all things that you offer. So that's what you're being generous with. At the same time, you're going to be selfish and ask for what you need. So you need to make sure that the league or wherever you're training is providing time for you to work on your personal goals. You're not constantly just being asked to facilitate the drills. You're also able to work on the things that you need to work on. You need access to skate skills coaching. It is absolutely crucial that as a referee you have access to space where you can develop as an official, and that includes skating. So you need to be able to practice on skates with your league. You need opportunity to practice in all ref positions, not just be the ref of many things while you're standing in the middle of the track trying to jam time and pack ref and jammer referee and hold the game and do everything at once. Sometimes that's valuable. Sometimes you'll need to fill that role, but sometimes you'll need to say, not today. Today, if there's no one to do that, that's a shame. Maybe someone's going to have to step out of the drill and help, because I really need to work on being a jammer referee right now. You need opportunities to officiate scrimmages and games. It is vital for your development that you have access to real gameplay, whether that be sanctioned regulation, intra-league, inter-league games, or whether it is scrimmage training, it needs to have the structure of an actual game. You need to know what it feels like to have multiple jams in a row with the proper lineup time in the middle, with all of these things that make the structure of the game real. And you need to be equally materially supported as any of the other members of a league. Now, this will vary from place to place because everyone is in a different financial position and everyone has different financial structures and so on for their league. So I'm not saying that anyone, that there's no set thing that you should be in receipt of or anything like that. But if your league has a system in place for reimbursing travel to tournaments for skaters, is there something like that in place for officials? If they subsidize team uniforms, for example, is there a way that you can get your shirt or something sponsored? There are financial barriers to being an official, just as there are financial barriers to being a skater. It's a huge issue in roller derby, but it's something that people are working on, particularly for the skaters. And it's important that as an official, you make sure that leagues think about the fact that you're there too, and you're facing those barriers too. So also the education. So for example, the WFTDA learning management system subscription, there's a financial cost involved there. There are, you can apply for it to be waived based on your own circumstances, but also potentially your league has some money available to help support that. So make sure that the league is considering officiating in its financial decision making. Now, a lot of people will have multiple roles when it comes to being with the league, and I know a lot of people that have joined this course are skaters who are interested in doing more officiating, and we've had a lot of questions about people. How do we get a chance to do both those things? And I know we've said start those conversations, try and be really honest about like how it can be helpful. Hopefully you don't have to like fight too hard for it, but there are so many like benefits to having more officials at training and to having skaters who know how to officiate. Having more officials means training times and training scrimmages feels more and more like a real game. Skaters are able to train and have their gameplay be responded to in a way that a full crew of officials might. And you notice there's a really significant thing when leagues that have never played a sanctioned game with a full crew of officials, or they don't train regularly with a full crew of officials, then they go into that gameplay situation. There are suddenly lots more people seeing what they're doing, and they're suddenly getting a lot more penalties. So it's beneficial for everyone if there are more officials. Learning the game from a new perspective makes you a better player. It makes you a better coach. Like, you're offering something different if you suddenly have all this like amazing rules knowledge. And it's important that your teammates, it's important that the teams that you coach, if you're also, I used to be a bench coach as well. It's important that people understand that what you offer in that sense is increasingly valuable based on your development as an official. And yeah, investing in the sport in a new way makes you a more committed contributor to the community more generally. So if you care about this thing that you're doing, if you've just developed this new passion for being an official, for being a referee, you're going to be more into the whole thing. You're going to be more willing to show up to events. You're going to be more keen to like put your energy into it because you're being seen, you're being respected. So for anyone here who's also on that more league decision-making side of things, think about that as well. Like, your officials are going to be more active members of your community if they're seen and respected, and that includes skater officials. So what can you actually do at training? So improving as a skater should absolutely be one of your goals at all times. It doesn't matter what level you're officiating at, you should always have a goal in your head of improving as a skater. Now, the skate skills that will be most useful for you will vary depending on your particular goals, your particular body, your particular limitations, your particular aspirations, but you can always be a better roller skater, and you should always want to be. Because any attention, any effort that you don't have to put into your physical practice is extra bandwidth for the mental and emotional demands of the role. So we've talked a lot about how your focus is really drained. You have to be looking in a million places at once. If you also have to be thinking about, how do I put my one foot in front of the other, and how do I turn around this corner, and I need to put my head over here so that I can get the momentum around my shoulders. The more you can not do any of that stuff, the more your feet can just muscle memory go where they need to go, the more power you'll have to just focus on the game and to do that officiating thing. That being said, a key focus is on efficient movement. So again, we're talking about conserving your energy. Like, the reason to get an improved technical skating stride is to move efficiently. You're putting less energy, you're wasting less energy in moving. You have more energy available to not only move in a more sustainable way over the course of a whole game. You don't get a lot of breaks as an official, but you're also conserving energy that you can channel into that mental and emotional side of things. Speed, agility, and responsiveness are absolutely crucial for improving as an official, and whatever that means for you. Now, that's a lot about efficiency, skating stride, being able to go fast, being able to put all of the power that you release from your body into the act of going forward is a key skill. And agility and responsiveness are, again, about just being able to, if your mental energy is telling you, I need to be over here, I need to be over there, I need to go down now, I need to duck under this arm that's suddenly swinging from the other jammer referee beside me. If your feet can just do that, if you can just respond, if you can just move your body and be in those places as fluidly and efficiently as possible, the less you will be distracted and removed from the game. Something that is kind of unique for officials, although we're seeing it more and more in roller derby. When I first started, roller derby was generally, if you were a skater, you skated forwards. That's not so true anymore, because people skate backwards to brace, and we see a lot of that kind of stuff. But officials, referees, skate backwards a lot of the time. If you watch footage of jammer referees and inside pack referees, they also skate sideways a lot. I certainly spend most of my time on the infield as a jammer referee skating sideways, with my hips kind of parallel with the track boundary and my feet just going in a sideways direction. And so sometimes the skate skills drills that are being provided by the league with which you're training are not suitable, or they don't meet that need particularly. You need to have some space and some opportunity to practice moving in these strange planes of motion that potentially aren't utilized so much by skaters. On the other side of things, we have kind of visual drills that you can do in training. So we've talked a little bit about soft focus, but it's also important to zoom in. You need to accept that you'll never be able to see absolutely everything that's happening. And if you try to like take in everything at once, you won't see anything. And when you try and recall it, you'll have this really muddled recollection of so many different things that kind of happened, and you won't remember what order they happened in. And it's actually better to see one thing and to really see it, and to see it from its beginning to its conclusion, to see this action as it goes through the pack, to see this action as it has consequences, and to be able to then recollect that action. So that needs to happen simultaneously with the soft focus we talked about before. You need to be zooming in on one particular action, while at the same time letting your peripheral awareness register other information, like, is there a pack? Is there a no pack? So while I'm watching this very particular back block contact, do I know if there's a pack? Do I know if the other jammer is lead yet? Do I know all of this kind of information? So when you're training at drills, try and practice that. Try and focus, zoom in on particular things, but also when the drill ends, ask yourself, was there a pack? when I saw that thing, was there a pack? Do you know? Keep practicing, keep trying to track whether you have that information or not. And you can store that information using a kind of a ritual muscle memory type thing. I have various actions, including like flicking my hand like this, like tapping my leg in certain ways, that embed certain actions into my mind while I'm going through a jam. So if I'm skating and I see an action that is a potential cut, or if I see an action that is, this was a pass on the fifth, this was a pass on the last blocker, now they just need to establish position for earning lead. There's a physical trigger that I do to store that in my body. So it means that if I'm asked to recall it later, I can remember the physical sensation of, yes, they absolutely passed everyone in their initial trip, because I registered it with this particular action in my hand, with this particular muscular memory. Let training be a time where you don't have to do everything. We talked about this a little bit in terms of position. You will kind of be asked to do everything, and most leagues don't have the privilege of having full crews of officials at all of their training sessions, but you need to be able to have space to focus on your particular role. And yeah, back to the muscle memory thing. It means that when you recall, you're recalling based on factual events. You're recognizing what has actually happened rather than how you felt about it. You're recalling the action rather than whether you made a mistake, whether you got something right, whether something good or bad happened. You're just recalling like the true physical objective reality of the jam. And that means that you can express accurately in an official review without kind of constantly holding on to this idea of whether or not you are did it right, or you're like dwelling on previous issues. Dalia, can you chat a little bit, please?
Yeah, I think I can chat a little bit. So our promise to you is that we are going to come up with some exercises and some training tips for each of the sessions that we've had. We really want to make sure that actually we did this in a time when we were unable to skate. We were unable to make this the full type of ref school that there would be. This would not just be theory. There would be the fun and joy of skating and developing your skills. And something that I found is that it's really, really genuinely so hard to prioritize your own development as an official when it can feel so urgent to go into that scrim, to help out, to do this. And so you end up with mediocre to poor skate skills, you know, even if you have at one point passed, you know, your fundamental, you know, the minimum skills. So we want to try and bring together a bit of a very brief, I'm going to call it curriculum, but it's just going to be a few drills and skills that we are going to release after ref school, so that we can help support you further when we are able to do things a bit more practically than we are able to do now. Tam, would you like me to continue with goals?
No, it's all good. I can come back here. I apologize. There is a small toddler who's very sad that I wasn't in the room that they were in. So we have cuddled that out. Yes, goals are very important. We're just going to do this very quickly, but basically, if you want to train, if you want to grow, if you want to develop, you need to give yourself some direction. You will help yourself hugely if you engage in an active process of goal setting, goal adjusting, and working towards meaningful, actionable goals. So set your goals regularly, be clear about what they are, use like tangible structures. Vague goals can be helpful, but it's difficult to track progress, and it's difficult to feel like you're moving towards something if you don't know exactly what you mean when you say, I want to be better. Reflect on the goals that you've set, adjust accordingly. Sometimes you will have a goal that involves a specific tournament, or involves a specific kind of game, or involves being able to work in a particular context. And then sometimes things happen and those things just don't work. I was out of commission last season with a brain injury from a concussion, and that is the kind of thing that forces you to completely reset a lot of your goals, or just reflect and be honest about how things have changed based on changing circumstances. You haven't failed at a goal because your goals change. And then once you have goals, put your energy towards actually meeting those goals, and make sure that the things that you're doing in training have a measurable, tangible contribution to the goals that you've set yourself.
Yeah, which leads us really nicely into the next section. Because goal setting really varies. So like when we think about progressing beyond the basics, right? You've got to that point where you're skating and you've thought about your goals, and that can really vary, as Tem said, from I want to do this particular tournament to I want to learn how to skate. Like for such a long time, I couldn't transition backwards, like turning right or something. And it was like, I am going to work on this. And like, that's important to think about. So something that I didn't find out about until quite a bit into my roller derby career was about your roller derby CV/games history. You can find out everything you need to know about this on the WFTDA website. I'm just going to quickly show you what they look like, so it doesn't come across as a completely scary thing. There are 2 different versions right now, but just use whichever version is on the WFTDA website, because there have been some issues around data protection. But basically, the purpose of a CV, I think, is twofold. One is so that you can keep track of the things that you've been doing, so that you can see, well, I've head ref this, and I've IPR'd this, and I've OPR'd that, and you can have a look at it. And the other reason is in order to help you show what you have done for people who are selecting for games. So this is what an empty one looks like. I'm going to show you my one. And you basically put it in the date in a very particular way, which for a British person, this isn't the way that we would usually do it, but it's helpful to go it in. And you then just literally put where the event was, who was hosting it, who was playing, what type of game, so WFTDA, all that kind of stuff, whether it's regulation, sanctioned, or other, which I'll talk about in a moment, what role you did, and who else was there, and any other particular notes. Put in the things that you care about, right? So at first, just to even keep track of things, you might put in things that you think were, weren't, they were kind of scrim-like, they were this, they were that, but put them in. This isn't set in stone. You can remove things from it when you're like, actually, I've now done this tournament, or I've done this game, and having scrims in there doesn't make sense. You put them under other, because the people who are selecting will know what to look for. And in the older version, in the version that is kind of more available nowadays, you can put in other things and other histories really easily to keep track for yourself. So that's one thing. Like, make sure you start doing that as soon as you can. And if you've already started and you've thought, oh no, I have done dozens of things and I have no idea where they were, who was the head ref, who was the head NSO, ask the other officials who were there. And they may have updated their CV, and they will share their CV with you. And that is a very easy way to get a good and up-to-date CV.
Dahlia, can you quickly just, go back to your CV and go into the profile page?
It
seems like the right time to tell people that, yes, regardless of the kind of CV that you have, this is the newer version where it says clinics, education, and certification history. If you would like to, you can write in the event London Roller Derby Referee School and the dates of the course, and you can put that information in your CV. It's the kind of qualitative information that may or may not be interesting to selecting officials, but also this is your personal record of what you've done and what kind of education and so on you've engaged with. You can put this course on your CV. That's the section to do it in the new version. In the older games history document, this one, the best thing is to kind of add it in other history, or alternatively, because that's kind of built for games and so on, you can just add a completely new tab to the spreadsheet where you can record this kind of free-form text information. Thanks.
Yeah, and it's important to say that it's London Roller Derby because this isn't an official clinic from the WFTDA. But actually, if you've gone to all 9 sessions and you've learned stuff, it shows that you are making the effort to really, learn. And actually that can be a really important decision when being selected. So there are lots of different types of games. I'm going to go through this quite quickly just because of time and because I don't think it's the most important thing. You've got scrims. I put them into quotes because they're not games. But when we say scrim, it's short for scrimmage, and it's basically when people are practicing. And for some leagues, that might be that really taken very seriously, where, you know, they time it, it's kind of like a game, but not, but it's a bit more informal. For others, it might mean that you have 10 minutes of one team playing and then another for another team if you've got more than one team in your league. For others, you might just swap in and out. It really varies. But it's worth thinking about, am I joining a league that has no scrimmage time? Because if you're doing that, you will then have to think, well, where am I going to get my development to see gameplay in this kind of informal, often more relaxed, more educational setting? So that's something to consider. You've then got what we call like challenge team games. They're generally very informal. It might be just a bunch of people who will have like a common identity or something in common, and it can really vary from loving dogs and cats and Buffy or whatever kind of TV to like particular identities around having lung conditions or particular groups of people of color or particular religious groups. And that could be more of like a challenge team type thing. The thing I would say is often people say that this is a great opportunity for newer refs, which I agree, it is. However, also, I think it is worth saying you should check who the more experienced officials are there, because otherwise you end up with quite a chaotic game where people aren't sure what's going on. There isn't anyone who's able to share their knowledge or learning. And I don't think it's safe, to be honest, when you have just very, very inexperienced officials. So I think encourage your friends or other officials in the area who are more experienced to come along and help mentor and show you the ropes a bit, because it feels that challenge team games can often be really overlooked. Sometimes that's out of fatigue, right? Because actually, as you get more experienced, as you want to have a better CV, you are looking for regulation and sanctioned games more. So for example, one of my goals a few years ago was to be able to apply for WFTDA playoffs. Just apply. I had no expectations of getting it. But to apply, you have to have done a certain number of sanctioned games and tournaments. And so at that point, I had to focus my energy. Regulation means that it's a game that is between any team that is following the WFTDA rules and the risk procedures. And so basically at that point, what you're looking for is there enough room for the refs? Is there a visible clock? All that other kind of stuff. And then sanction means it's to a really high standard. You know, the officiating and cues policy is being followed, the officiating procedures is being followed, the risk management, the charter policy, the forfeit. But more important with sanction particularly, well, the thing that makes it even more unique in some ways is it's the charter, so often the A team of WFTDA member leagues. So for example, in London Roller Derby, we have 4 teams and it's only sanctioned if it's London Brawling, and London Brawling, our A team, have agreed with the other A team that they are going to sanction it. So they're going to do the paperwork and they're agreeing that it will then contribute towards their ranking. There are also other formats, such things like sevens, and they have different rules. So often they will use the same cues, like the same kind of verbal and hand signals, but they sometimes have it where like the jam is at always, 2 minutes, or they have different kind of timing changes. And the other thing that I should say is that for junior roller derby, there are different levels where they're allowed different contact. And that's something to consider as well. But also, junior roller derby can go onto your CV. Tem.
Yeah, so when you're applying to tournaments, when you're looking at different kinds of games, the tournaments that you apply to, the events that you want to go and officiate at, is the way to control, is to cultivate that CV of like a number of different games. So the type of game is one factor. It's the kind of thing you want to consider. Sometimes events are particularly attractive because they have lots of different game types, because they have lots of different levels of official working together. They have lots of different levels of team working together. It's important to note that sometimes that like sanctioned and regulation don't necessarily reflect the intensity or level of the gameplay. For example, Dahlia and I have both officiated London Brawling, doing fundraiser events where there are some very silly things going on. It's definitely not a sanctioned game, but the skaters who are playing are the same skaters that are playing in some very top level WFTDA sanctioned gameplay at other times. So the kind of contact that you see is at that kind of speed and pace and so on, that you might expect from some very, very high level sanctioned gameplay. So, and similarly, sanctioned gameplay, that sometimes teams that are much, much further down the WFTDA rankings, sanctioned games that need to follow that same level of like procedural, structural rigidity to like, it matters because of the rankings, it matters because these teams are like the charter teams who've really invested themselves in this. Like obviously every game matters, but sanctioning, there's a level of intensity around sanctioning that is true regardless of the intensity of the gameplay itself. So there's a factor to consider when you're applying to tournaments. As you prepare for tournaments, you want to be thinking, have you had practice time in the role that you're going to be performing? Have you rested well in advance? Are you physically ready for the demands of a tournament, a multi-game, multi-day often event? Often tournament days, including travel days either side, for example, you can be expected to be in a venue from like 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 3 days in a row. And that's really, really intense. And so you need to know for yourself, like, are you ready for that? Are you prepared for that? Do you have things in place to allow you to rest? Do you have access to space where you can take naps? Do you have food? Have you done some research around the venue, around the location? What do you need? What's available in terms of meeting your needs while you're there, because you're doing something really intense. But also being around people. Tournaments are a place where you travel and you learn, you meet new people, and you learn new things. And it's an opportunity to make friends and to build community. And sometimes it can be really intimidating. A lot of the time, I know personally that the kind of people that often invest their life in doing something like roller derby officiating are not necessarily always the most social beings. And it can be really scary trying to make new friends. And one thing to remember is that everyone was at their first tournament at some point. Everyone didn't know anybody else on the scene or whatever at some point. And just kind of being present, having conversations, chatting with your fellow officials about the gameplay, things that like you have in common because you both literally refereed that jam, can be like a helpful way to build community. But at the same time, it's worth kind of remembering that you will be working with people as an official that you maybe don't want to be friends with, you maybe don't like them, you maybe don't know them, and being able to kind of balance your desire for community and making friends with your commitment to doing a good job. And sometimes I've seen people be less assertive and less kind of honest about what they've seen and so on as an official, because they're afraid it might affect their kind of social relationship with other officials that they're working with. That's a very real tension that exists, but it is important that you let yourself do your job.
Completely. So the next bit is like, how do you grow as an official? Like what do you do? Like how do you continue that? I think number one, the mindset that you have is really important, that there is always a space for you to be learning. I remember being at one tournament where and I was jam timing, so I was NSOing, and someone was like, your whistles just need to be sharper, right? At that point, they're not picking me up on like, am I timing the game appropriately? But that feedback is super helpful because actually that noise and that level is really important. So as I say, feedback is a gift. And that means that you need to think about how you give it, right? If it's a present, are you going to wrap it up? You're going to put a bow on it? How are you going to give it? And then also, how are you going to receive it? Are you going to put it in the back of your cupboard and like leave it there for a year? Are you going to open it? Is it the best place for it to be at the back of the cupboard? Because in the middle of a jam, I didn't need that feedback right now. And really think about that. But especially in a British context, people are very uncomfortable giving or receiving feedback. So if you are someone who wants to go in and be like, I want to be better, I acknowledge that there are things I could do better, tell your head ref, tell your crew, be like, I am really open to it. This is how I like it. You know, ideally maybe written, or perhaps in a quieter moment. Talk about how you like to receive it, but make it really clear that that's something you're open to. It's something that I think is really essential when feedback can be deemed negative, and also when people are so scared about it, they do what can otherwise be known as a shit sandwich, which is like good, bad, good, which can then diminish the good, right? Feedback is important, not because it's always about how you can improve, but it's about what are you doing awesomely? What can you do more awesome? I personally do not waste my time giving feedback to people who I don't believe it will help, or I don't believe can be more awesome, right? Actually, like, you give that energy because you just think that someone, if they adapted this way or they did this over the next jam, the next 2 games, over the next year, they will improve. But don't forget also to say what they're doing awesomely already, because actually you can get carried away with this idea of like constructive criticism. And if it's not constructive, I mean, it's not feedback, right? I don't like the term constructive criticism. So that's one way to grow, and make it clear that like, if you're looking for that, ask from it. And like the tournament head, the skaters, like, how can you be communicating? Think about who you getting feedback from would make you better as an official.
Yeah, so one of the main ways that you can get better to improve as an official, and one of the things that people have asked us a lot about, is like, how do I gain confidence? How do I feel more secure in the calls that I'm making and the things that I'm saying? How do I feel confident enough to apply to this event in another place? And I think sometimes people confuse the idea of being confident with being right, and people try and perform confidence by really doubling down on situations, by not being very open to questions about things that have happened. Sometimes when people have their calls questioned, I find that if people are visibly trying to perform a kind of intense confidence, trying to like manifest that confidence in themselves, sometimes that works. But often people that are doing that, when you then try and like ask or interrogate, or if you're in an official review, for example, and you're trying to go, what did you actually see there? Did this thing happen? Did that thing happen? That performed confidence that actually gets twisted into this obsessive resoluteness is really challenging. So it's important to understand that you can be confident without being right. And actually, if you're open to the fact that you might have made a mistake, if you're open to kind of working with skaters either in training or in a game to kind of go into the actions and reinterrogate things, people will respect your approach. They'll respect your commitment to do a good job. And when you're respected, you're going to feel like what you offer is valuable. The more valuable you feel, the more confident you feel that you're doing a good job. You just have to keep doing it. And the more you do it, the more confident you'll feel. But let yourself be wrong. One of the really key ways to get better and to gain more confidence and to feel more secure in yourself is to do footage review. So whether you're watching footage of your own games or archive footage, footage review is a really valuable way to gain some insights. Now, it's important to note that reviewing footage should be an opportunity to see more and to see more deeply. It's not a space for harming yourself with judgment and self-deprecation. It's really hard to do. It's very tough to watch footage of yourself officiating a game and not just fixate on the stuff that you think you're doing wrong, or the time that you're out of position, or you're more likely to notice things that are off than things that are like switched on. But the way to do that is to, next slide, go into it with some really clear questions. So set for yourself, I want to know, like, what was my positioning like in this particular role, this particular time. There was this action that came up at this point, or I want to focus on pack definition and I want to do this. Like if you have some really clear parameters, you'll be able to interrogate without judgment. Watch kindly. If you notice things, try and notice whether you could possibly have noticed those things at that time. Cameras come from different angles. There are different opportunities to see different things. Just because you see something in a video doesn't mean you even could have seen it at the time. So like, be kind to yourself, be kind to the officials that you're watching if you're watching archive footage. And yeah, back like we were talking about the muscle memory and recalling jams factually, examine the facts of a jam as though it's a casebook scenario. Like if you watch something happen, try and break it down, see if you could write up the events of that jam as one of the like complex scenarios that we've done in this course, and consider it in that kind of academic way. Try and detach it from the actions or the personalities of either yourself or other officials involved. Use the video tools, the speed control, screenshots, angles, and whatever. Acknowledge that they're simultaneously superhuman, that you can't possibly go through a jam in slow motion in real time, but they're also super limited in the sense that you can't tell everything from a distance video. So acknowledge the limitations of the medium, and don't just watch alone. If you sit on your own for hours watching footage of yourself being like substandard, which is something that I have wasted too many hours of my life doing, it's just really depressing and it's not productive. Watch with other people, have discussions, make it like externalize it, make it about more what's going on. So watch with your peers, watch with your mentors, and discuss the actions. Mentors? What are mentors? One thing you might want to do to grow as an official is to find an officiating mentor, to talk to someone, maybe someone local, someone you've worked with and connected with well, someone who has time and energy and space and would like to help you grow. Just ask someone, send an email. Sometimes they'll say no. Sometimes they'll say, are you being daft? We are peers, not mentors. Sometimes they say, I would be delighted to help you. There are so many different responses. They're all valid. Just ask people, see if you can get a conversation going about the help that you want and the help that they might be able to offer you.
Yeah, and the thing I would add to, I am. The thing I would add to that is like, no one's ever going to be offended if you ask them to be a mentor, right? They might be surprised, they might be intimidated, but they're never going to be offended. So it's worth asking. There's loads of other ways you can find stuff around educating yourself. One of them is resources.wftda.org/officiating, where you can find tons of different resources that you will need. So I think we're about 5 minutes away from the end, and we're going to talk about what next for the roller derby ref school community. So the thing, let's talk about this. The thing I would say is that please continue chatting on the Facebook group. We're going to keep that live and open for other people who join, especially if you're the only official in your league and you have questions. But there are tons of other roller derby officiating communities online, and actually we'll maybe do a thread in the Facebook group that we can email out with like, where are they in your country or your city or your community or continent, that people can find like the games going on, ask those hard questions, find community. And also I think we potentially are going to use it for, if we're doing something and thinking, we're having a conversation about pack definition, do we want to invite the entire community? We'll probably post it onto their kind of following this. So it's not only for us to be using, but please do feel free to use it. We're getting near the end, and we would like to end, if we can, with a Mentimeter. So we're going to do this just quickly. So if it's too much for you to do, please just keep on the chat. But otherwise, can you go to menti.com, code 54895. That would be great. And the thing we'd like you to do, this is going to be a question. I don't remember if you remember this from last time. We did it kind of word clouds, but this is going to be a question of something you feel more confident about now, or something that you've learned, whatever it is. And the code is up here. So it's 54895. Just having a reflective, speedy moment near the end of this session. Becoming a ref. That's great. Asking another official for feedback. Yeah. And the thing about feedback is, if you really feel like oh, that didn't relate to me, or I don't see that, ask other people. Don't get defensive, but go, that's interesting, like absorb it in that moment, and understand that particularly some head refs may have different expectations. So that's also important. Like all of this is so relative. Leading in a head ref capacity, social skills, rules, individual need requirement. Awesome. This is really lovely. So thank you for inputting into this. Hand signals, awesome. There's a few. If we've done a cloud, I feel like hand signals would be right in the middle there. Just to save time, although this is open for a bit, so you don't have to go on to the next one if you don't want to. I think you can respond kind of continuously. This is going to be a sound cloud. I don't know if I can actually, I can like highlight things. How do I move on to the next one? There you go. This is going to make a word cloud, so that'll be cool. Something you're excited to learn more about. You know, whether it's because you're still confused about it and you're baffled, or because you've really just found it so interesting. Like, what things are you wanting to learn? I mean, the game, I feel like it could just end there. Yeah. Skating skills, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to putting something helpful together for skating skills training.
Awesome. A few of you are saying pack definition. The larger the word is on this, the more people are writing it. Yeah, skating skills, they're so important and they're so overlooked. Did someone say something about whistling? Whistleblowing, yes, practice it. Like if you need help with your whistleblowing, let me know. It's hard. Like honestly, if we were doing this in a gym hall, we would have spent time just blowing the whistle, doing the like da 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 da. Like we would have practiced all that stuff. Pack definitions, skating scenarios, whistleblowing, different roles, the game, yeah. Certification. So certification is a thing. There's not enough time to talk about it, but it's a thing that you can do if you want. It'll become more essential, but that's for another time. Amazing.
I love that skating skills are like big, because it's kind of like, yeah, we've spent 9 weeks talking about roller derby. Let's go do it. It's great.
I mean, 100%. I'm
also very passionate about skating skills.
Yeah, and my skating skills are the thing I wanted to work on this year, which is unfortunate, but they'll always be next year, and that's the exciting thing. So I'm gonna stop this now. Thank you. You can keep writing it, and we'll post all of that onto the Facebook group. So if you're still there, please present. But the thing I want to say, we're now running a minute over, so I apologize. Or actually, it's 4:00 on the dot. We've had over 1,000 people sign up to learn about the rules of roller derby. That's ridiculous. Like honestly, in real life, if like 1 to 5 people had turned up to a hall in London to learn, I would have been so excited. And I really hope that after this, you turn up to a hall wherever you live and go, I'd like to learn, or I'd like to do this. Or if you're a skater already there, be like, I'm going to just officiate for this like 20 minutes. We've had over 600 people in the Facebook group, over 450 people in the live sessions. Thank you. Like you've created this community. There are loads of different resources, all of which are on officiallyawesome.uk, but the particular ones we want to highlight are WFTDA, Nerds, like tons of Facebook groups that we'll highlight, and the LRD Ref School Facebook group. I should also just say that officiallyawesome.uk is run by myself and Short Circuit and Holtz. And on that note, there are loads of people to thank. We're still going to do the 30-minute Q&A, by the way, and we have like a little bit of a surprise in a minute, so if you don't have to run away, please stay on. But I really want to be explicit about the people that we're thanking. Holtz and Short Circuit have done tons of work behind the scenes. They're the head NSO and the assistant head ref of London Roller Derby. I also really want to thank London Roller Derby. This is a really hard time for anyone to be doing extra work or their league work or anything. And actually there have been so many people like Valks and Ramit and PR and like loads of people who have just like really helped with this being a thing. Our subtitle crew, those subtitles that aren't the YouTube ones, have been done by a group of like 2 to 4 like incredible people, and we are just very grateful to them. Nickname for the roller derby drawings, Wonder Zebra for updating Nerds from Vienna Roller Derby, which used to be called something else, but that's irrelevant now because it's called Nerds now, and it's the magnetic whiteboard. Our wonderful guest officials, and also just thank you. It's been really overwhelming for Tem and I to have anyone listen to us or engage. Like we aren't the all-being people of roller derby, and this has been very strange because until very recently I didn't even feel really confident enough to run a ref school, so then to put it online and have 1,000 people sign up was like very beyond what I thought my skill set was. So I'm also very grateful to Tem for doing this with me, because Tem is not a member of London Roller Derby, but has given so much time and love and care for this. And you, So if you want a certificate, if you want something to acknowledge that you spent 9 weird weeks of 2020 learning the rules of roller derby with London Roller Derby, there's a certificate. You can find it on officiallyawesome.uk/certificate. And it says, here's a lovely certificate to go with your awesome new rules knowledge. We have another version, which is like, I did this course and I got this awesome certificate, but we went with this wording because we thought it was nicer. And also we've got like this logo thing now. So we're thinking we might make patches and stuff like that, because actually you are officially awesome, or awesome officially. And we just really appreciate you. So I'm going to let Tem speak in a minute, and before we go into the Q&A, but I do just want to say thank you for being officially awesome, and hopefully see you on the track. Tem, do you have anything you want to say?
Mostly just thank you, not to go too intense into the thank yous, but it's a real pleasure to have been invited to help you out with this, and I'm really glad that it got to happen, so thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, anyways, as we always say at the end of this, this is free. If you would like to make a donation to the London Roller Derby, or any of the food banks, and actually I'd really encourage around the donations around like the food banks and things like that, and also anything around Black Lives Matter right now, please do. But otherwise, we want this to be as accessible as possible. We all know that roller derby is not accessible, and hopefully learning the rules and thinking you might be able to get that one step closer to being an official will help you with that. On that note, we're going to do what we do to end this. So if you've got to run away, then do. But I didn't mean to do that. I meant to stop sharing. There you go. And we're going to ask you to do some hand signals and do some hand signal practicing. Tem, do you want to go first?
Yeah, let's do delay of game. It's a tough one. It's this. Interference.
Oh, that was harsh. I mean, we just done all these thank yous, and now we're going to be like, and you still don't know enough. In fact, on that note, what is this? What hand signal is this? We can see you writing it in the chat.
We can't do it that way around.
Someone's done it. Someone's done it. Let's have more faith in the folks here. Yeah, it's no pack.
Okay.
Do that, so everyone do a no pack. Yeah, it's still great. I'm still loving it.
Sorry, I panic whenever you ask me to say something, and then I end up just saying something that doesn't really work.
What is back? Oh, that's all right. Back block. Let's do back block. Back block. I feel like is there a oh, there you go. You've got it. Good. Sorry, so it's like that. And actually, the feedback you will end up getting is stuff about like the speed and the height of how you're doing all this kind of stuff. Tem, one more from you.
Cut. Yeah. Everyone got that
one. Leg block. Leg block.
Woo.
Yeah. So leg block is when you stand up and you go like that. I'm really glad this shirt's pretty long because I'm just wearing like pajama shorts. And I was like, oh no, I'm standing. Well, that's awesome. That is great. So on that note, does anyone have any questions? Has anyone asked any questions? I'm gonna check in and just see, because we are, as always, Holtz and Short Circuit have been gathering all the things. If you have any questions that you would like to say verbally, then please say that in the chat, and you can unmute yourself. But otherwise, we're going to ask a question about whether you do want patches that say officially awesome. You can have them even if you haven't been on this course. And I saw loads of comments about the free food at tournaments. And honestly, I think a league gets more officials if there's good free food. And if you're a skater here and you are listening and thinking, how do we get more awesome officials at our tournaments? Free food and making it aware that you're going to get free food is really good, because it's really expensive for refs to go to tournaments. You know, I had a conversation with a player once. Actually, this isn't true at all. I'm lying. I was talking to an official who had a conversation with a player. I've never had this conversation. Who was saying how they were talking to one of their team, like one of the people on the team, and they're like, you know, we've played at so many games this year. You know, I think they've done something like 10 or 15 or something, which is a lot, actually. It's like a lot of games for like a year for some teams. And that official was like, I have officiated over 100 games this year. That is a lot of games for an official. That is a ton. But if you think about the ways in which officials learn And actually something that we didn't say is that it's really hard to learn if you don't meet other officials, like, and grow. So learning how you can travel in a way that's affordable to you is really important. That doesn't mean going abroad. It can mean going to that league that's like an hour away. But it's really hard to really grow. If your goals are, I want to be the best official I can be for my home team, and like that's all I want to do, I don't want to travel, that's not what I aspire to, you can still be a good official. If you want to be an excellent official, I do believe that you need to meet other officials to learn that best practice, learn the things that aren't written down. And I think that is when it becomes really, really expensive. And so asking your league how they can support you is really important on that. There is a question, thoughts on requiring MSR, is that a minimum skills requirements for officials? What should be the minimum skating skills required? I'm going to leave that to Tem. Tem has so many thoughts on skating skills.
Sure. So I think it's tough because kind of like with skaters, I think there should be varying minimum skills requirements based on the context. In terms of whether someone is safe to officiate on skates at a scrimmage, it's literally just that. Is this person safe to officiate on skates at a scrimmage? And it should be kind of done, in my opinion, in a kind of free-form way that the coaches, the training committee, people who have been like helping someone learn how to skate, who have a good big picture view of how comfortable that person is on skates, can determine, yes, this person can safely be on skates while we play roller derby. Like that's the main thing. When you're then looking at like when people are going to officiate scrimmages, going to officiate in places where they'll be working with other officials, traveling to officiate games and so on, I think it's tough because I don't like the minimum skills, the WFTDA minimum skills as they are right now, and the WFTDA has just like embarked upon a process of overhauling them entirely. So I don't want to reference them too much, but I will say that whatever minimum skills are developed in this process of overhaul, I think officials should strive to meet as many of those things as possible, because having a considered in place skating skills training program is a really valuable way to like develop as an all-rounded official. But for example, there are some things that are just not relevant to officials. I don't believe that officials should have to train in taking contact in the way that skaters do. You will take some contact as a referee, it's true, but I would never have been able to officiate a game of roller derby if I'd had to pass an assessment based on hitting or being hit by other people, because I don't want to touch other people. I actually also genuinely failed part of my minimum skills, which was the feedback I got was, you're great at everything apart from being near other people. You can't be in a pack, so you can't scrimmage, or you can't like be on a track playing roller derby, because when you're near other people, it's like you freak out. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. That's just who I am as a person, but I don't want to be near other people. I want to stand on the inside and point and blow my whistle. So actually, I think it holds a lot of people back that would potentially be very good officials and could be good skaters in lots of different ways if they're held to the same standards as people who want to play roller derby. But I don't think that means that your skating skills don't matter as much as an official. I think there are just kind of different emphases, and safety is the most important thing, and then everything beyond that is like improvement. What can you give to the game? And depending on the level of gameplay that you're going to officiate, do you have the skills to match and respond appropriately to that game and to actually offer that game something meaningful?
We've had a follow-up for that, which is what particular, and you've kind of covered this, but maybe like really succinctly, what particular skate skills, if you are already a skater, would you say you need to work on more as a ref than as a player?
Backwards skating and sideways agility, and skating while your head is doing a million other things.
Yeah, and we will have these courses, but there's things like throwing a bean bag to each other, like whilst you're doing other things, just to kind of get your head going into different. We'll give you some stuff like that. Yeah, sideways agility. The chat are enjoying that,
and that's actually something that teams are training more and more, because there is more a culture in the last couple of years, the last 2 or 3 years. There's more I've seen in team skating drills of like T cuts, cutting to the side and like stepping sideways, doing little like, and it's the kind of stuff that before, like a few years ago, that was less what skaters did and more what refs did. But skaters are doing that more and more, which is great to see. But yeah, refs absolutely need those skills. So
there was a question about kind of the culture of thanking officials at the end. There is definitely that culture in the UK. That was like kind of the question of like going up and thanking. Some tournaments will give you like a patch. So like, as you kind of saw, like my derby bag has it. I regret putting it on my derby bag because it's made it less waterproof, but like people have it on their jackets and things like that. The thing I would say is I like it when skaters come up, but like maybe a fist pump. I think actually after the time of COVID, our entire culture will change inevitably. But also being aware, like people may not like hugs. And if an official looks like they're running away from like being swarmed by like a lot of sweaty people who may want to thank them intensely because they're on a high, just maybe shout like, thank you. Or like catch them at like an after party afterwards. Because actually,
I'm literally a ref because I don't want to touch people, so I definitely don't want to hug.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, entirely. And
this is too much insight into my personal contact feelings, but there you go.
I mean, Tem and I can do another thing afterwards about how we feel about personal contact, but I don't know if this is the moment. But the other thing as well is like, if you're at an after party and you're a skater, say hello to the officials. They might just kind of ignore you and be like, I didn't realize they knew who I was. And also it's really hard to recognize anyone if they're not wearing a helmet and like their skate gear. I just don't know who anyone is at any time, which is, so like introduce yourself with your name. Let's make it more accessible. But there is a power dynamic, and often the skaters are seen as more powerful at every other moment than during the game. During the game, everyone acknowledges that like refs have power, which as we discussed in one of the first and second sessions, let's challenge that. But every other moment, there's like this dynamic that basically makes it really intimidating for officials to talk to players. So players, if you're watching, try and be friendlier, even if someone seems super confident, and like say hello or just say thank you, because that can mean a lot. And it can mean that that official will come back and officiate your next game or your scrim. If a league gets a reputation of being either unhealthy or bullying or just like unwelcome, why would you spend 2 hours traveling somewhere? Like why would you go there and spend your time doing that? Okay, we've had another question. One is, this is a region-specific question. If you completed London Roller Derby fundamentals skating skills as a player, does that mean you can ref as well? Yes, as in if you have passed that and you have the skating skills and you are with us in a hall somewhere and you came up to me and said, I would like to ref, we can do that. We actually, as a league, all of our players have to officiate either NSO or ref for like, I think, a few times before any game to be eligible. So that's been encouraging some rules knowledge. Obviously, if there is no official there, they won't be growing that much during that session. But otherwise, I like to go and ask them, like, what are you focusing on, right? And it can be really small because they're only doing it for like 20 minutes maybe, or an hour, I can't remember. It feels like so long ago. But if you are a skater and you're like, oh, actually, I'd like to just ref 100%, and we can either work out how to do a ref school in person, or we do it as we go. Okay, we've had a question actually for Holtz, which is, can Holtz give any insight on getting into NSOing rather than being a skating official? So Holtz, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hello. Real quick before I answer that question, with regards to thanking officials at the end of a game, please be aware that some NSOs have a lot to do right at the end of the game. So if they're frantically looking at paperwork and comparing clipboards, do a hello from far away and thank them when they're not frantically writing a bunch of shit down and fact checking, because that can be quite, I don't want to ignore you, but I have a lot to do immediately after a game. But to answer the actual question, pretty much just ask. I will give you an example of how I became an NSO. I was thinking about roller derby. I didn't have any contact with the sport or anything like that. And what I did was I Googled roller derby London, and London roller derby came up. And then I was talking to a friend I knew in the States who played roller derby, and I asked her, if I just emailed out of the blue and asked to be an NSO, would that be okay? And my friend responded, if you did that and I was on the other end of that email, I would marry you. That is how much we need NSOs in roller derby. NSOs are rare, especially dedicated ones who's really important. It's an important role. And so we would love to have you. I've seen some things in the chat, and we currently have no plans to run an NSO school, but if you would like to, once things are all back up and running, if you would like to come and NSO with me, London Roller Derby, I would love to have you. Please just email us or contact me in some other way. I would be happy to have you, and I can run you through the basics. What you usually start with is looking at the paperwork. Penalty box timing is usually the role to start with, so looking up the rules for that is just useful to have in advance, but it's one of those things that you kind of have to have. You have to do it with real players to understand what the what it really is about, and what all the little technicalities and that sort of thing. But yeah, there's yep, good point, chat. There are some good NSO tutorials on YouTube. So yeah, just email your local league, get in contact with them. They would love to have you. I'm 100% sure of it.
Yeah, entirely. Someone said Dublin Roller Derby have some nice NSO tutorials on YouTube. That doesn't surprise me, because Dublin Roller Derby are one of my favorite teams ever to officiate, and I don't think that shows bias, but it shows that I've remembered how they treat officials, because I've never been to Dublin before. So I'm glad that their officials have stuff online as well. We've had another question. What are some strategies to recruit refs and NSOs right now, like COVID now, that are being used? Tem, do you have any ideas?
You missed out the lol. The lol is important.
Oh, sorry, lol. I'll do it. What are some strategies to recruit refs and NSOs right now, in brackets, like COVID now, lol, close brackets, that are being used?
Good, that's better. Thank you. So I think some things are things like this. I know a lot of teams are kind of offering collective footage review watching, like let's all get together and do like a party watch of the final of the championships or something, and it means people that can't skate or haven't skated or have kind of been lurking in the background and wanted to get involved but haven't quite, but they're following all the social media channels and stuff, can kind of get themselves into the community while training it doesn't happen and everything's happening online. Similarly, things like this, rules kind of school type situations where people can use this time to like learn more about the structure of the game and hopefully be like less intimidated by the idea of officiating, because I think that's often a thing when people are very new. I know a lot of the time people come into minimum skills like fundamentals training, and there's like, here you go be a skater, or you can do this really overwhelming thing where you read hundreds and hundreds of rules and you maybe do this instead. And actually that's quite a lot for people, but I think because of the context of the slowdown of this COVID-19 situation means that there is an opportunity for people that are maybe at the beginning of their journey within the world of roller derby, or people who are potentially looking for a way to branch out from their traditional roles or the roles that they have been doing for a while in roller derby, using this time to wrestle with the idea of being an official in a way that's less intense and immediate than here's a whistle, off you go.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is like, ask your friends who you think might be interested. Like the reason I became an official is because a friend was like, I've just started this fundamentals course with LRD. Do you want to come NSO? And actually, I had been friends with people in another league in London for quite a long time, never been asked. I'd never thought about it as something I could do. And so it was when someone asked me to come along and be like, all you need to do is arrive in a hall. If your phone has an app on it that can time a jam, great. Or like time a penalty, cool. But like they made it really easy because they asked me. But on that note, make sure your website makes it really clear that it's a genuine option, that you want it to be there. Think about the messages your league is giving out. If you go onto your Facebook page, if you go onto your website, is it all about fundamentals and skating and being a player? Which obviously if your league is small and you've got 5 people and you really need players, understandable. But is there also really clear messaging about officiating and the officiating community you want to build? and how they can do that and make it easy and simple and seem fun. Like there is no deep end, right? There is no being like thrown, like it's just, how do you do this and how are we going to make it easy for you if you are committed to doing it? I think is something that's really important as well. Some people are saying because of COVID, we haven't had a recruitment day, but prior to COVID, we advertised the need for non-skating officials. We have NSOs and refs at recruitment for folks to speak for questions. Yes, remember to communicate with your officials. They can seem really other, and it can be because they seem distant, but it could be because they seem distant because they don't know where they fit within a community. It's really hard to have a particular identity. So another question which links into that really nicely is, do you have any leads on officiating watch parties? So actually, over the course of the last 9 weeks, LRD, within our officiating crew, have been having watch parties. And the reason I haven't invited everyone else is because I felt it was really important for our crew to have some time hanging out together. But the conversations we were having is like, what kind of roller derby do we want to watch? Do we want to watch really high level stuff where we're looking for really particular things? My internet's awful. I will never see any of the particular things right now. Or do we want something that's a bit lower level where it might be a bit more explicit and we can have a bit more of a dialogue? In terms of leads, find one other person who wants to watch it with you. Write that in the Facebook group and I'm sure people will join you. All you need is a Zoom account. If I'm around, I'm very happy to use my Zoom account. And I'm very happy potentially once I've had a bit of a break to do it myself and I'd be like, I'm gonna watch something at this time. But have a go at it. But the thing is, you do need good internet. And that is something that my internet has not always been kind about. But if anyone else has any leads on watch parties, please put that in the Facebook group or anywhere. Even watching half an hour, right? So then you can use the free Zoom account, really valuable. And having a conversation with other people, really valuable. What do you think about that positioning? What do you think about that? There are also tools that allow synchronized YouTube streams and not as heavy as Zoom on bandwidth. If you can tell us what they are called, that would be great. Because yeah, I just mostly use Zoom. I think there's also one called like Jitsi, which is free and allows you to watch Jitsi, that allows you to watch YouTube on it, like share YouTube, Google Meeting, Cast, 27 as in TWOSEVEN. Yeah. I think that's it for the questions that we've currently had. So on that note, thank you. Thanks for joining us. Let's see if we can keep chatting in the Facebook group if you would like. And otherwise, I really do look forward to seeing you on a track when we're able to, because it's going to be so great. Even like when you get onto a track just to do your skate skills, like let's thrive at it and really focus on like what the goals that we want to be are. And if you have any other questions or anything else, let us know. Because I feel like in the UK I'm going to be sitting right here for quite a while, so I hope wherever you are in the world you start skating and enjoying it, and yeah, thinking about roller derby. I think that's it. Yeah, I'm gonna say goodbye. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Nothing else to say. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.